Hi, welcome back to another podcast. So I'm very excited today to be here with Wei-Fen Chen, and she's here representing her co-authors as well too. It is Wang, and then also Chenyang Shao. And we'll be talking more about the article that they had come out in the September issue of JAR, and it's titled "When to Appeal to Cultural Capital in Advertisements. Cultural Capital Appeals Increase Purchase Intentions for High but Not Low-Priced Products." So thank you so much for being on, Wei-Fen. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Colin, for having me.
Awesome. Yeah, so let's dive right in. And so I always like to start off with just an overview of what your article's about for people who may not have taken a look at it yet or may not have seen it yet. So can you tell us a bit more about what is it that you're looking at, and then how do you go about actually investigating that?
Yes, for sure. So although I think the title has pretty much summarized everything, but then, yeah, so I'm more than happy to elaborate on the details a little bit. In this paper, we look at the concept of cultural capital and how we can strategically appeal to cultural capital in advertisements. So to provide a little bit of like the background, cultural capital generally, by definition, it refers to a set of socially distinctive and recognized skills, behavior, knowledge, or taste. So we usually say someone is very cultured, very posh, very sophisticated to show that they have a strong cultural capital. But in this paper, we don't really look at people. We look at like advertising narratives. And then so we see advertisements such as if you drink this wine, it's like you are tasting the history of the country, or it's like we see collaborations like between manufacturers and the artist. They can do co-design, co-branding, and have the artwork on the packaging, etc. Or they can say that the process for us to create this product is like a journey of art, for example. And then so these can all be examples of appealing to cultural capital in advertisement. And then so we do see this kind of examples every day, but we don't seem to have a very systematic understanding about whether this kind of appeal will actually work. If they
That's
work,
true. Yeah.
then then in what scenario it will work better and why it will work. So
Hmm.
that are the questions we are interested in exploring. So the finding of the paper, quite straightforward, is that cultural capital advertising appeals will work better when the products are relatively high priced but not low priced. And then for practitioners, if your products are relatively high priced in a certain product category, then probably appealing to cultural capital in advertisement would be a good idea. So that was the first finding. The second finding was about the why question. So we argued that because of cultural capital and the high-priced products, which imply economic capital because of the strong purchase power, both help status acquisition. So they both help
Hmm.
people to acquire social status. So they share the similarity in terms of the function. And then so this kind of a congruence will increase persuasion. So this has been very established scholarship about how congruence in different level can increase persuasion. But in our research, because the congruence in function, it eventually increase consumers' purchase intention, right? So that was the findings of our paper.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, thank you for that the summary. So it sounds like the basic idea is that if consumers are aspiring to look like they have more money or look more sophisticated in some way, right? That this sort of effect of that the cultural aspiration, being described in advertising, it works better when it's a more expensive product because you have that kind of synergy with that,
Yes,
economic aspiration as well too. Is that right?
yes, that's correct. So that synergy is a very good way to discuss this. Yes,
Okay, cool. Yeah. And do you want
yes.
to describe a little bit, if you could, about just like how did you investigate this in your paper as well too? Yeah.
So in terms of like you mean in terms of like how they work together or
Oh, just or that or in terms of like the studies you ran or sort of like
oh
the
yes,
yeah, yeah.
yes. So we just chose different product categories. And then so that's also something that I would like to highlight is that this effect can be observed in a wide range of product categories. And then so it's like we just have a high price one and a low price one. And the product categories can be from wine, from bottled water, or from hotel, anything. So it can be service, it can be hedonic, it can be utilitarian, it can be just like a like very affordable items.
Mhm.
And then we have like by one is like a product is actually available in the market. So it's like a bottled water. And then so the bottled water is like one, they have a collaboration with the museum, I think. And then so they can feature Van Gogh's painting, I think it's Starry Night, as
Right.
part of the packaging. The other is just a regular packaging. And then so this one apparently appeals to cultural capital. And then so that would be in one of the studies we use products that's actually available in the market, and then we also use fabricated ones and etc. And then so we found that, of course, generally people would like the cheaper products. They have a higher purchase intention for that because it's cheaper. But then we
Right.
found that for like high-priced products, then actually when you use cultural capital appeals, then it helps increase their purchase intention significantly. Yeah. So we have three studies, and then just to test this effect, and then to test the why. So we ask how fluently or how easy it is to process the information. And then so we found that when the cultural capital they are associated with high price products, the processing the information seemed to be easier. And then but not with the low priced products. Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Yes.
So it
Yeah.
really sort of pointed to that congruence again that you mentioned earlier, right? That like if there's that symmetry or that congruence or it kind of makes it easier to process. Whereas if it's kind of clashing, I'm thinking about like imagine H&M or something, right? Like a
Right.
discount retailer, appealing to cultural capitals. It seems kind of like a
Right.
misfit, right?
Yes, yes, yeah, that's true. And then so, but I think fashion is interesting example because the price range can be huge. So we do have a
Yeah,
luxuries or something. But if we are talking about like bottled water, for example, and then the bottled water, even the expensive one can still be relatively affordable. But then we still see the effect can be observed. So it's like so the bottled water is it can be from I don't know 50p locally. I don't know here I live in the
yeah,
UK, so it can be from 50p, and then so it can be from £3. So it's like a big difference. And then, but if you associate that with a £3 like posh water, then I think this
yeah.
will work better. Yes.
Yeah, that's true. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess the it sort of leads into the next question, which is like asking about like what does this mean for advertisers and marketers, right? And I guess it's pretty straightforward, the sort of high level in terms of like
Yes.
obviously like more expensive brands should be taking advantage of this type of appeal
Mm.
versus cheaper ones should not. I'm wondering, is there anything else you wanted to add there, any sort of nuance or things like that beyond sort of that high level takeaway that you've already kind of nicely described?
Yes. Yes. No problem. So, I would say for practitioners, of course, the main key takeaway is just suggested in the title, but I would like to highlight that it applies to a wide range of product types. So I hope people will not misunderstand that this will only work for cultural products, for example, only with books, only with museum admission, or only with concert, etc. So it's not just about that. And also, it does not need to be a very expensive product category. So once again, so people probably will think, oh, does that mean the effect will be better if I'm selling houses, real estate, cars, or jewelries? But it's not like that. So in our studies, we use like face mask, which is
Hmm.
affordable and disposable products, and we still observe this kind of effect. So that would be the first takeaway is that it can be applied to a wide range of products. And the second, as indicated in our paper, so this effect does not seem to be influenced by the cultural capital of the consumers, which means it does not seem
Mm.
to be influenced by how cultural the consumers are, how well educated they are, or how
Huh.
knowledgeable they are, etc. Right. So we can measure their cultural capital, but it does not seem to influence our effect about the
Yeah.
consumer's side. So I would say the second takeaway would be to use this kind of like cultural capital appeal in advertisement, probably prioritize the consideration about the pricing before we consider any specific demographic traits of the target population. I think that's because it's not about cultural people can better process that kind of cultural
Mm.
uh, appeal. It's just about congruence in processing. And then so because it's just about persuasion, so generally for most people, it's like as long as you associate cultural capital with high price products, that will work, even if those people they don't really have a very strong cultural capital themselves. So for in this case, I would say probably the demographic trait are not as relevant as pricing strategies here.
That's interesting. Yeah, because it like when you're speaking just now, it made me think about like box wine, for instance, right? And I wonder like even within that category, which is relatively cheap wine, right?
Mm,
There's a
mm, mm, mm,
premium
mm.
within that category. And part of that, I've seen the boxes like the packaging, and it does appeal like to sort of like that European sensibility, right? That you're drinking like the better box wine, right? So even within that cheaper category, there's a premium within that, right? Or I think about like
Right,
the other thing I
right.
was thinking
Yes.
about was like Las Vegas, right? And like the
Mm, 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 mm.
Bellagio and the Venetian and things like
Right, yes.
that. They're
But there are also
expensive for
budget
like,
hotels there.
they're
Yes.
still relatively cheap, right? For hotels, right? They're not cheap, but
Yes.
they're cheaper than like, I don't know, they're not thousands of dollars a night, right? But people get that
Right.
sort of aura of like, oh, I'm somewhere that's like fancier, somewhere more European, right?
Yes, yes, that's true. Yes, yeah. So there's something that you mentioned. You said like maybe for expensive brands to use that. That's interesting because we didn't really look into brands. We look into like products and their pricing strategies. But I think of course like expensive brands to use that. But I also wonder, it's like for one brand with different lines or collections and how that can probably use this cultural capital appeal. Probably only apply that to their high-end collections or something. And then so it could be like that. Yeah. Or like you just mentioned H&M or Zara. I think nowadays they have the consciousness collection or something, which is more expensive, I think. And then
Oh, interesting.
so yeah, yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so. So it's like for a jumper with a sweater, like it's no longer like 15, 20 pounds, it's like 120 pounds. And then
Wow.
so
Okay.
yeah, yes. So I also wonder whether that will interact with the aura of the brand or the image of the brand, and then to influence that. But we didn't look into branding or the brand image, and we focus on the pricing and then the price range of the products. Yeah, but that's a very good
Yeah.
direction to
No,
further
it's still very
develop.
helpful though. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm curious as well too, like where did the idea come for this? Was it the water bottle that you came across or something else or yeah.
Yes, yes. I wish it's just like they're available. But actually, so I've always interested in drawing on some sociology concepts and apply them in my own research of advertising and communication. And cultural capital is one of them. So when I was a postdoctoral researcher, then I started a project about cultural capital and consumer behavior, and that was very ambitious, very comprehensive. And then so I discussed the cultural capital of people and the cultural capital narratives in advertisements and their interaction, etc. And then so for that paper, whenever I present that or share the ideas with people, then they always say, oh, it's interesting, it's intriguing, it's ambitious. And then they will say, but then they will ask a lot of questions about how to define that, how do you operationalize that? What do you mean cultural capital in advertisement? People acquire cultural capital, can they lose that? Can they hold on to that? Or can that be changed or something like that? So because of that, then I was thinking maybe I need something focusing on the one end to start with, either consumers or advertising and narratives. And then I think I need something that's more straightforward, and then that is clean and neat and just help me argue what I would like to argue and to just like clarify the strategic use of cultural capital in advertisements. So that's how I came to this project, how I developed this project. It was really based on a painful learning experience. It's like to manage something too bulky. And then now I realize probably trim down that a little bit and then to really discuss some like a fundamental application and fundamental ideas, and then to have the robust result. So I try not to be too ambitious in this project. So in this project, we have three studies, but I think they are enough to argue what I would like to argue at this stage. So it's just about how we demarcate the idea, the application in advertising, and then the best practice and why we argue this is the best practice, just like that. And then so that's how I came with the idea. It's actually by trimming down some very ambitious and bulky projects, and then finally we have this like hopefully small but beautiful project. Yes.
Yeah. No, it's
Yeah.
very nice. And I'm also
Mm.
guilty of the same thing as well too. I tend to like have
I
papers that
tried
are too much
something.
and then I'm like, this is better to cut it down and do something clean, right?
Right.
And have a nice story. So,
Yes, yes, and then finally people and me seem to be on the same page because I remember last year I presented this paper in Triple Eight conference in
okay. Yeah.
Portland. So
Yeah.
that was March 2024. And then, so at that time, the paper has not yet been published with JAR, but I have received some positive comments. People seem to know what I'm talking about. And then, so I think, oh, that's a good sign. And then, so yeah, so I think that was the right direction to develop the project.
No, that's awesome. Yeah.
Thank you.
So, next question as well too is just about any challenges you experienced while going through and working on this,
Uh,
because I this is something we often don't talk about publicly as academics, and I think it's
right.
important, especially for PhD students and junior scholars, to know that it's not always easy. So I'm curious,
Yeah,
did
yeah,
you have any challenges while going through this, or was it,
right.
what was your
I
situation? Yeah.
I appreciate most of the challenge took place before this project. So
Okay,
that's
that's good.
why, yeah. So because of that, I learned from that, and then so actually this project, the process was quite. I think it's smooth. I think I can say that. And after I submit the paper to JAR, then I think in the first round of revision, then I think the reviewers gave us a very clear path of revision. And then so since then we felt reassured. It's like as long as we do this, and then eventually then it will go to a very nice outlet. And then so, but I do remember we spent a lot of time trying to find the products. Just like the bottled water you said, it's not like really available just like in the fridge of the convenience
Yeah.
store. Instead, we will try to find products that's available in the real world, and they come with two versions of communication, one with cultural capital, one without cultural capital. And at the same time, we don't want too many people to be aware of this one for the purpose of doing the experiment. And then
Yeah.
so for this, I need to thank my second and the third authors, and they spend a lot of time testing the products and trying to find a suitable one, and then to make sure that it is appropriate, but at the same time not too well known. And then so eventually, yes, we appreciate that, and we use the bottled water products in one of our studies. And then so I think that increased the implication for the real world practitioners. And then so I think that was very helpful. But it we did spend some time trying to locate this kind of products.
Yeah. That makes sense, right? Like it's a lot of time just prepping and getting the right stimuli. It makes sense. Yeah.
Right, that's true. Yes, true.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you kind of alluded to this earlier with the bigger project you spoke about, but like what else is coming on this topic, right? Where else might researchers want to go, or where else might you be going in this area? Yeah.
Yes, I would say cultural capital, this idea, I think it's fascinating. It sounds nice, but then it is also constantly evolving. So it's like now in popular media or in the academic outlet, then we will see a new phenomenon or a new practice described as cultural capital. So for example, if in the digital age, let's say if there's influencers, and the influencers, they can set the trend of fashion. So is that a kind of cultural capital? Or if they can gain a lot of attention, is that kind of cultural capital?
Hmm.
Or in general, it's like if that's not cultural capital, but what kind of capital is that? So or a bigger question behind this is like nowadays we probably have a different way to understand the social status. So it's no longer about money, it's no longer about instrument, artwork. So I think basically it echoes a very complicated and ever evolving nature of status acquisition and
That's true.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that would be one. It's just about the concept is constantly evolving, and there are so
Just a
many
moving
discussions
target.
out there. Yeah. And the second way I think we can probably take this project or scholarship further is trying to discuss the idea in situations where different forms of capitals don't necessarily go hand in hand. So, for example, it's like nowadays we observe people who can be very sophisticated, well educated, and with very nice manner, very nice upbringing. But because of the macro societal economic problems or the gig economy or anything, they probably don't enjoy the financial security as the last generation or
Mm,
two generations ago than people will enjoy. And then, so I would say these people probably have more cultural capital than economic capital. And then, so
yeah.
for them, if they don't go hand in hand, would they still respond to the advertisement appealing to cultural capital in the same way? So maybe they will appreciate very affordable items to associate it with cultural capital because that's something that they can relate to.
Mm,
Or they just don't respond to this kind of cultural capital and high price products association. So I do think that the kind of situation where different forms of capital can be incongruent can be a potential boundary condition of the effect, but we will need to
mm.
look into that.
Yeah, that's an interesting
Yes.
point to bring up. Yeah, because it could
Mm.
almost be like painful to be reminded of that,
That's
Yeah,
true. That's true. Probably dissociation is like you don't want to be reminded of that. Yeah. Or
yeah.
yeah, that's true.
Yeah, no, very interesting. I wonder as well too, like if it's different for different, generations as well too. Like you mentioned, it's sort of moving. I wonder like, younger people seem to have sort of a different sort of, perception of luxury goods and things like that as well. I've heard some reports that, Gen Alpha and Gen Z are less excited by that and they're kind of moving away from
Yes.
it. So I'm curious to see how that evolves too. Yeah.
Yes. 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 Yeah, so we have identified, I think, based on what we said, you mentioned about different generation exactly, and different, of course, different social context. And previously, we talked about how the brand aura may play a role in this process. What if it's a luxurious brand but giving you a very affordable item? Then would you still consider
Yeah.
that as suitable for cultural capital appeal? But I'm not sure, but that are all very interesting directions to explore. Yeah.
Lots of ideas for future research. So, yeah, thank you so much, Wei-Fen, for coming on and talking more about your exciting article.
Thank you so much, Colleen.
Yeah. And of course, and for those who are interested, again, it's in the September 2025 issue of JAR, and it's titled When to Appeal to Cultural Capital in Advertisements. Cultural Capital Appeals Increase Purchase Intentions for High but Not Low Price Products.
Thank you so much.